Welcome back, friends of the old stories and forgotten winds. Tonight, I want to take you deep into a time when the prairies whispered secrets, and an ancient dance carried both hope and dread. And today's story is, why did the ghost dance terrify the US Army? The year was 1890. Across the sweeping plains of the American West, the Lakota people felt their world-shrinking buffalo herds vanishing, treaties broken, their sacred lands carved apart. In their despair, a prophet named Wovokapayut Holy Machad a vision. He spoke of a great renewal. If the people danced the ghost dance with pure hearts, their ancestors would rise, the buffalo would return, and the white man's world would fade like morning mist. Picture it now, the frozen Dakota plains under a bruised winter sky. A ring of Lakota men, women, and children swirl in unison, dressed in white muslin shirts painted with sacred symbols. They spin, sing, and we prayers riding the wind like snowflakes. The drums echo like distant thunder, their rhythm steady and mournful. But the US Army saw something else. To them, this dance was not hope, it was rebellion, a wildfire of defiance threatening to ignite the frontier. Soldiers stationed at Pine Ridge and Standing Rock sent frantic reports. The Indians are dancing again, they are preparing for war. On a bitter December night, Lieutenant James Forsyth stood on a bluff overlooking a Lakota encampment. The flames of their fires flickered like restless spirits across the snow. He could hear faint singing carried on the cold wind, a strange, haunting melodies in a tongue he could not understand. He shivered, though not from the cold. Among the soldiers, fear spread faster than frostbite. Stories whispered of ghost shirts, sacred garments said to repel bullets. Some swore they'd seen dancers whirl through gunfire unharmed, shadows dissolving into moonlight. Every song, every drumbeat seemed like a challenge to their authority. Meanwhile, in a lonely Lakota tipi, an elder named Runs with Dreams clasped a small pouch of sage. He whispered to a young boy beside him, "Do not be afraid of the dance. Be afraid of men who do not understand it." The boy listened, wide-eyed, as outside the chanting rose, a trembling thread of hope against the biting wind. That night, under a vast sky filled with cold stars, two worlds faced each other, desperate faith of a people on the edge of extinction and the rigid fear of an occupying army. The ghost dance turned faster, wilder, the drums a heartbeat of the earth itself. And far away, in Washington, D.C., officials studied telegrams with growing alarm, their pens scratching orders that would soon stain the snow red. The winter of 1890 crept over the plains like a silent predator, its breath cold and merciless. Snow drifted across the reservations, blanketing the earth in white silence, yet beneath that stillness, something powerful stirred. The ghost dance was spreading, carried from camp to camp by whispers, songs, and desperate hope. To the Lakota, the vision was clear. If they danced in unison, their ancestors would return, the buffalo herds would thunder once more across the plains, and the white man's bullets would shatter harmlessly against their reborn world. In the glow of firelight, hundreds gathered beneath the frozen stars, their silhouettes swaying in a sacred circle. Feathers and paint caught the moonlight as voices rose, haunting, rhythmic, unyielding. Each stomp of their feet was a prayer, each turn a plea to the spirits beyond. The drums echoed like distant thunder over the snowbound hills, carrying a message older than the conquest that now threatened to erase them. But beyond the flickering edges of the fire, soldiers watched. Some, shivering in their blue coats, could not help but feel the weight of what they saw, a people pushed to the brink, now calling upon powers the soldiers could neither see nor understand. Rumors twisted through the forts and newspaper swilled claims that the Lakota were preparing for war, that the ghost dance was not a prayer but a battle cry. Fear, like frostbite, spread quickly among the ranks of the US Army. On a moonless night, a young scout named Thomas Keller rode hard across the frozen prairie to deliver a warning. He had seen it himself, hundreds of Lakota dancing in a trance, their eyes closed, their bodies swaying as if possessed by the spirits of the dead. "They don't feel the cold anymore," he whispered to his commanding officer, his voice trembling. "It's as if something walks among them, something not of this world." Meanwhile, within the Lakota camps, old men told stories by the fire. They spoke of Wovoka, the Paiute prophet who had received the vision of the ghost dance after falling into a fevered trance. Wovoka had promised that the world would be made new, that their lost loved ones would rise, that rivers would run pure again, and that the buffalo would return in endless numbers. For a people stripped of their land, their freedom, and their dignity, this promise was salvation itself. Yet every night the wind howled over the plains like a restless spirit, and with it came whispers of danger. Settlers reported strange lights on the horizon, flickering like phantom fires. Soldiers muttered that even the horses grew skittish near the reservations, as if they sensed something unseen moving among the dancers. The line between prayer and rebellion grew thinner with each passing day, and somewhere, deep in the heart of the frozen prairie, fate was waiting. The days grew shorter, and the prairie sky turned the color of cold steel. By now, the ghost dance had reached a fevered intensity among the Lakota. From dawn to dusk, and often through the night, entire villages moved in unbroken circles, their voices merging with the wind in an endless chant. Snow swirled around them, but they danced barefoot, their eyes closed, as if the winter itself no longer touched them. Word of these gatherings raced across the plains and into the towns. Newspapers printed alarming headlines. "The Indians prepare for war," and "Savage rituals threaten the West." Merchants locked their doors early, families packed wagons, and telegraphs buzzed with desperate messages for reinforcements. Fear twisted every report until even whispers became proof of rebellion. At Fort Robinson, Captain James Forsyth unfolded a crumpled map on a wooden table. His gloved finger traced the reservation borders, his brow furrowed in doubt. "If they're planning an uprising," he muttered, "this ghost dance is the signal." A grizzled sergeant shook his head. "Or maybe it's just prayer, sir. We've taken everything else, Eland, buffalo, even their language. What else do they have but prayer?" But Forsyth's jaw tightened. To him, prayer or not, any spark could ignite the plains. Far away, in a Lakota camp near the Badlands, an elder named Chaska sat beside a flickering fire, watching the dancers' shadows leap across the snow. His voice, low and steady, carried the weight of generations. "The soldiers do not understand," he said, the flames dancing in his eyes. "We dance not for war, but for life itself." But even as he spoke, distant gunshots cracked the frozen air, warning shots, or perhaps a message: the army was closing in. Among the dancers was a young woman named Ahiv, her long braids swaying with every turn. She had lost her brother in a skirmish months before, and each step she took was a step toward him, toward a world where he might live again. Her breath turned to mist in the cold, her feet numb against this, but she did not stop. Round her, the drums thundered louder, as if the ancestors themselves pounded the sky. That night, a rider brought grim news. Sitting Bull, the great Hunkpapa Lakota leader, had been killed during an arrest gone wrong. The camp fell into stunned silence, broken only by the hiss of the fire. For the Lakota, Sitting Bull had been more than a man, was a symbol of resistance, wisdom, and hope. Now, even hope seemed fragile. Some wept quietly, others tightened their fists around ghost dance shirts, the sacred garments they believed would shield them from bullets. Beyond the horizon, soldiers advanced through the snow, their breath fogging in the frigid air, their rifles glinting under the pale moon. The prairie, once endless and free, felt smaller now, its vastness closing in like a trap. The stage was set for a meeting of worlds shown built on faith, the other on fear, and the outcome would be written in blood on frozen ground. The winter deepened, and with it, the tension between two worlds hardened like ice on the Missouri River. In the Lakota encampments, the ghost dance grew even more desperate. Children shivered in thin blankets while their parents spun in the sacred circles, their faces pale with hunger but alight with unyielding hope. Each step was a plea, each chant a fragile bridge to the old world, a world before broken treaties and vanished buffalo. At Fort Yates, telegrams arrived daily, each one more frantic than the last. The Indian Bureau demanded action, and Washington's politicians whispered of uprising. A single spark, they feared, could ignite a prairie-wide war. The army, already stretched thin by winter patrols, prepared for the worst. In their barracks, soldiers muttered uneasy jokes, the kind men tell to mask their fear. But when the wind howled across the plains at night, even the bravest among them felt something ancient stir in the darkness. Meanwhile, in the Lakota camp, Ahiv spun faster in the circle, her breath ragged in the frozen air. Visions blurred behind her ears, vast herds of buffalo, green plains untouched by fence or plow, the faces of her ancestors standing tall against the sky. She stumbled once, caught herself, and whispered her brother's name. She could almost hear his voice in the wind, urging her to keep dancing, to believe. But belief alone could not halt the march of soldiers. Captain Fawcett's unit drew closer each day, leaving deep tracks in the snow-covered hills. At night, their campfires glowed faintly on distant ridges, silent warnings beneath the moonlit sky. The soldiers spoke of Sitting Bull's death in hushed tones, as though the very air might carry their words to hostile ears. They were not hunting buffalo or bandits now, they were hunting a prayer. On a bitterly cold evening, Chaska gathered the dancers around a fire that crackled and hissed like an angry spirit. His lined face seemed carved from stone, but his eyes burned bright. "The army thinks our dance is a weapon," he said quietly, "but it's the heartbeat of our people. Without it, we are already dead." Ahiv watched the flames climb into the night and wondered if the Great Spirit was watching, too, if even the spirits were afraid. That night, snow fell thicker than before, muffling every sound except the steady rhythm of drums. The dancers moved slower now, exhaustion weighing on their limbs, but still they turned step by step around the sacred circle. The wind carried their songs across the prairie, a fragile thread of hope in a world that seemed ready to snap. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of their firelight, the army waited in the darkness, rifles loaded, nerves taut, listening to the haunting music of a people on the edge of despair. By morning, frost clung to every blade of grass, and the horizon glowed faintly pink. Far to the east, riders approached scouts, their horses' breath steaming in the frigid dawn. They carried orders that would change everything. The time for watching was over. The army would move on the dancers soon, and the world would remember what happened on that frozen ground forever. The dawn of December 29th, 1890, broke cold and merciless over Wounded Knee Creek. Snow whispered across the plains, erasing the tracks of men and horses as if the earth itself wished to hide what was coming. In the Lakota camp, the dancers had gathered again, their breaths forming pale clouds in the freezing air. They danced not for war, but for survival, for a vision of a world where their children might still belong. The army approached cautiously, rifles gleaming under the pale sun. The soldiers were nervous, their fingers tight on the triggers, haunted by rumors that the ghost shirts made bullets useless. Every movement, Every breath seemed too loud in the fragile silence. A child's cough cracked the air like a gunshot. And then no one is sure who fired first. A single shot split the morning. Chaos exploded, shouts, screams, the thunder of rifles. Women clutched children, men reached for fallen weapons, and horses screamed as they bolted through the snow. The circle of dancers shattered under the hail of bullets, the sacred rhythm replaced by terror. The ghost dance had been a prayer, but now the snow was stained with red. When the gunfire ceased, the creek was silent again, save for the low moan of the wind. Bodies lay strewn across the white earth of fathers, mothers, children frozen where they had fallen. The army called it a battle. The Lakota would forever call it a massacre. And in the hearts of survivors, the dance became more than a memory, it became a warning. In the years that followed, the ghost dance was whispered of in quiet corners, banned by officials, feared by soldiers, and mourned by the Lakota. Yet, on some winter nights, elders say you can still hear the faint beat of drums carried on the wind over the Badlands. They say the spirits of those dancers still move beneath the stars, spinning for a world that might have been. The land remembers. The snow remembers. The very wind seems to carry the sorrow of that day. And perhaps in remembering, it asks us not to forget the cost of fear and misunderstanding. So tonight, as you sit by your firelight, think of the dancers who spun beneath an uncaring sky, the soldiers who trembled in the cold, the song that tried to bridge two worlds and was silenced by gunfire. Listen closely, and maybe you'll hear the echo of drums in the wind. And if you do, let it remind you that even in the harshest winters, hope can take the shape of a dance. Thank you for listening. If you found this story moving, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next tale waiting in the dark.